Stranger Stories.
Never miss another strange story. Subscribe and hit the bell. Sit back and get comfortable. I have a few stories to share with you. Welcome and good night. Today's video is the first out of 2 parts. I really hope you like Cannibals. I need to get this out here while it's still fresh in my mind. I think we all have probably been where I was this weekend. $2 left in my bank account, behind on the car payment, rent coming due, not a single job lined up until the following week. For a woman barely surviving on her own after a nasty end to a relationship, this was my criteria for the end of the world. I needed the money, and I needed it fast. Of course, it was really no one's fault but my own. The holidays had been kind to me. In my profession, it's the one time of year you could really count on your clientele, paying extravagantly for their catering. Sadly, I got a nasty divorce to hit me right before the new year, so most of my money went to court costs and the rest went to try to get my kids a few late Christmas gifts. I'm not saying any of this to make you feel sorry for me, just a statement of facts, as I know how exactly I started browsing odd jobs online at sites sponsored by third parties. You know the ones, but hey, I was desperate. I've used them once or twice before back in college and found there was one thing I could count on. The clients were always rich, so I set up a new profile and started browsing gigs right away. I probably spent a good 30 minutes and filled out 3 or 4 queries before an advertisement really piqued my interest. I typically copy and paste the details of any application info into a personal doc for myself, just in case the client tries to balk on the agreement later on. Here's word for word what the post said.
The right candidate must be discreet and willing to work odd hours. Will provide my own equipment and refreshments. I will pay in advance any price for those willing to commit to an entire dinner. Come alone.
And that was it. No email, no payment info. Just a plain sort of post that was buried amid 100 others. Honestly, I don't know why I even bothered to shoot them a response at all. I felt dumb even giving them my PayPal info. I was half convinced it was one of those spam bots. Then they contacted me with an address and forwarded $1,900 into my account. They promised a little over half that much when I was finished. Ever have one of those moments where you felt like dancing? I sure did when I double-checked my deposits and confirmed the money was actually there. The event was scheduled that very night. Not very much time to prepare. Since I knew these people were willing to pay, I cleaned myself up a little. I wanted to look like I belong amongst them. I called my friend Angelia to see if she could watch my twins and was out the door by 7. I told her I expected to be home after midnight. I don't know how many would be in attendance, and parties like this usually end with everyone getting shit-faced drunk, and that would mean more cleaning up for me. The place wasn't hard to find, just another high-dollar neighborhood in South Austin. It looked like the owner had about 12 or 13 acres, all for themselves. Not one nosy neighbor in sight, very discreet. I actually started imagining that maybe this was one of those hidden villas for a celebrity. I had no idea what to expect. There were about 7 cars parked near the front entrance, all of which appeared to be rentals. In my line of work, that typically means that all of the guests are some sort of My High Club registration sheet. I was doing a few breathing exercises in the car after I parked to get ready for what I thought I was in for. I stepped out into the cold, brisk air and I straightened my uniform before walking to the front door. It was open. I knocked softly and looked inside the dimly lit vestibule, calling out to anyone inside. The place seemed deserted. Despite my better judgment, I walked in and looked around a little bit. Everything in the entranceway and the den looked like it cost more than double my salary. I'm talking priceless paintings, antiques, decor. Whoever lived here was definitely not worried about money. I kept walking further through the house, trying to find out where the guests might be, and kept calling out to their attention. Still, nothing. I slipped my phone out and tried to call a number they provided me. It was just a dial tone, like the line had been cut. I know it was working before I left, only about an hour ago. Alarms were starting to go off in my head. I don't know why, but I didn't leave just yet. I was curious. Something was wrong, and I asked myself what was going on. I saw a light on in the kitchen. Maybe they were wanting to have a conversation with me before the main dinner got started. I pushed the door open and felt my heart skip a beat. I literally froze in fear. There, in the center of the room, was a man sprawled out on the table. He was naked and tied down, his arms open spread like an eagle, and the same with his legs. The man's mouth was taped shut, but I could tell there was fear in his eyes. I can see in his pupils the same fear that is reflecting on my face. Behind him, 5 other individuals that were also strapped down. Each of them had marking on their bodies, the kind you would normally find on a cow before it was taken to the slaughterhouse. I needed to get out of there. Get out, find a signal and call the cops, I thought frantically as I backed away and slammed the kitchen door shut. I stopped in front of the foyer to find a man standing there, locking the door behind him. He was well dressed, his beard trimmed neatly, and his clothes pressed and ironed. Everything he wore had to be designer, a man of privilege. As he finished locking the door, he turned to me, his blue eyes gleaming with surprise at the pace I was going. He was muscular. I knew it wouldn't take much for him to overpower me. I scrambled to search for my mace in my purse, and he smiled at me.
"You must be the cook,"
he said in a voice that sounded like he was amused by my behavior. I found the mace and pointed it straight at his face, spraying him as he tried to shield his eyes. I pushed past him, searching for the way out. I saw a window nearby and struggled to get it open before he recovered. I was too late. He was moving towards me rapidly, grabbing my right wrist before I could use the mace again. Please just let me go. I won't call the police. I won't tell anyone what you're doing," I begged him.
"Give me your phone,"
he demanded as I struggled against him. I tried to fight back, but eventually he snatched the purse from my arm. He took out my phone and shut it off as I stood there, trembling. My mind was racing as I imagined what would happen next. "Please don't hurt me. I have kids. Just let me go," I begged as I frantically tried to think of other ways out. I had no clue where any of the corridors went, and worse still, I worried that if I leave, the psychopath would find me anyways. He did have all my information after all.
"Hurt you? Why would I do that? I hired you,"
the man said as he took my purse and walked over to the nearby safe.
"You'll get your cellular device back once dinner has been served,"
he added, in what I guess was his attempt at a reassuring voice. But my stress levels were through the roof. What do you want from me?" I asked nervously.
"I would think that much was obvious. You're to cook,"
he said as he gestured towards the other entrance to the kitchen. I began to sob. This had to be some kind of a bad dream. Those are people. I can't. I won't, I insisted. The man frowned, clearly disappointed with my response.
"I'm sorry to hear that. I was expecting someone with more of an open mind to answer the post. If that's how it is, then I can show you out. I'll have to ask back the deposit, of course,"
he said evenly. I felt my heart slowing down. Was he really offering to let me go? And just like that, I'm free?
Naturally, I assume you'll want to call the police, and that will be disheartening for me, because my schedule won't allow for a proper cleanup, or even seasoning. It's not the first time I've had to settle for fast food,
he said with a wicked grin. I felt my stomach do flips. I knew he meant that even if I did contact the authorities, the people in the room just beyond us would still be dead before they got here. This strange man would be long gone, undoubtedly, meaning that I would be back home, penniless and frightened that he would come after me next. I needed to figure a way out for me to be done with this as quick as possible. If I do this, you'll never contact me again. You'll delete my information, and I will pretend this never happened, I told him. It was the only card I had left to play. I knew that if he'd let me into the kitchen, I might have access to the knives. Then I could muster up the courage to strike, save his victim, and be out of there. His eyes beamed with delight as he realized I was considering the bizarre job offer. As long as he kept thinking that, I could get the opportunity I needed, I thought.
I promise. I'll pay you a total of $3,200 if you successfully finish the meal to my liking,
the man said. I swallowed hard, trying not to think of the strangers in the other room.
Before you say yes, there's something I need to show you,
he interrupted. Then he walked towards what appeared to be a small conference room. He expected me to follow. Since I knew running wasn't an option at this point, I stepped into the small chamber and took a look at the items on the mahogany table in front of me. He had dutifully folded up all the clothes and had a fire nearby, which I assumed was to burn the evidence. On the table were several glasses of half-drunk wine. I guess that's how he must have caught them off guard, by spiking their alcohol. But perhaps what caught my attention the most were the newspaper articles, magazine clippings, and other documents he had organized right in front of the 6 guests he had lured here. I walked over to one of the articles, a small blurb about a domestic case in Amarillo, and read it as quickly as I could. I could feel his eyes on me. The clipping didn't say much, but the man filled in the gaps as I read it.
A husband accused of beating his wife for several years before she was finally found bruised and bloody in the stairwell of their basement. All evidence pointed towards him, but the court ruled in his favor thanks to jury rigging.
He pointed towards the next chair.
A teacher, suspected of placing surveillance in the girls' locker room and posting it online for voyeurs to watch. One of the girls committed suicide and he left his job before any charges were filled. A wife, a mother, raised 2 children of her own, and then turned her depression into anger against those same innocent children. Both were bludgeoned to death. She, ruled as a victim of her own mental health and sentenced to a mere 3 months in the county jail.
What is that? I asked as I turned to him. I was trembling again, but not out of fear, out of disgust at what I was seeing.
All of them are guilty in one way or another, guilty of crimes that society allowed them to commit, that they thought they can get away with,
he answered softly. Then he took me by the hand and guided me into the kitchen.
But tonight, justice is what I want served to them,
he said firmly. I was staring at the 6 strangers in front of me. Their eyes were still filled with fear. I knew, of course, that my host could be lying to me. I reached over to a nearby counter where he had arranged their wallets neatly in a row to be cast into the fire. Their names checked out to the ones in the articles. I was looking towards the glistening knives that were sitting on the corner closer to my left. I pulled out the carving knife. The men watched me, expectingly to make a choice. I was staring at the woman, the one accused of hurting her own children. She looked scared of her life. She was crying, trying to scream. I wondered whether her children had done the same when she killed them, and if she had showed them any mercy at all. I placed the knife right next to her hip bone and I began to cut.